What's a massive scandal/controversy that people seem to have forgotten about? The FBI knew the pedophile Larry Nassar was molesting child gymnasts and allowed him to continue for years. They went so far as to falsify the testimony of the victims. No one at the FBI has been punished. Nassar was sentenced in 2017. The NYC mayor's wife misplaced a whole lot of money and nobody seems to care. Edit. Warren Wilhelm, more commonly known as Bill de Blasio, appointed his wife who then proceeded to lose $850 million. Edit 2. Assassination of Haiti's president. Those Turpin siblings that escaped being chained to their beds by their shitty parents? Happy ending, right? Yeah, no. Turns out their foster parents ended up abusing them even worse and now a bunch of them are suing. Edited to add, I'm not American and this update did not make international news at all. Nobody I've spoken to about this knew of the update. Recycling. You'd be amazed and disgusted at how much stuff you think you are recycling that your municipalities are shipping off to other countries just so they can dump it in the ocean for you. We know this is happening too, but because we're disconnected from it we just ignore it. Edit, a word. Also edit, wow this blew up, and well after this post hit popularity. Thanks for awards people. Call your local GATA and push to have better programs in place. Ban single-use plastics. Email your fast food chains to turn their lids into drinkable lids etc. so many plastic items cannot be recycled. Wells Fargo Bank opening BS accounts and submitting credit card applications on behalf of their customers, without their knowledge or consent. I'm actually a customer with them and have been for years, so for all I know they did that to me, but all I ever got was a couple emails about how they're really a good company with good people and that doesn't reflect their values or some such crap like that. I think they ended up firing a lot of people and executives who knew about it were fined millions of dollars. But I mean if the practice went that high it must have been widely known. Edit, wow, thank you for the gold. This became one of my most popular comments ever lol. Ticketmaster buying their own tickets to scalp out at thousands of dollars. Airlines getting bailed out by taxpayers during crisis and with executives still taking huge bonuses. The quality of airlines significantly deteriorated because they don't want to compress profit by paying more to hire more and expand flight offerings again to pre-pandemic levels. In 2016 South Korea had a political scandal in which the president Park Geun-hye was exposed for being manipulated/controlled by a cult called the Eight Goddesses Cabal. South Korea was literally being ruled by a cult. Park was impeached. Pilot truck stops stole around $250 million from their customers. The owner was never really penalized for it and owns the Cleveland Browns. Edit, I used to work for the company. So I have a lot of knowledge on the situation. The $250 million number is an estimated amount based on my personal information. One amount publicly paid back to customers over $50 million. Two fine paid to federal government was $92 million. 3 many cases were also settled for undisclosed amounts. 4 the company was still eligible to receive a biofuel rebate from the government for more than they were penalized for. This allowed them to continue with business as usual. Edit 2, I want to state that I do not have any undiscovered evidence in this case. The specific amount of money stolen by pilot Flying J will likely never be fully disclosed. There has been some dispute in the discussion about my claim of $250 million. The criticism is fair. The figure I presented was my own educated guess. It should not be taken as fact. The case has been settled for a few years now and the public information is available online. While the amount stolen is disputed, there is no doubt that the company purposefully committed a crime against their own customers. They systematically stole money for years. It was a sophisticated and widespread practice within the company. They, specifically the owners, were able to walk away from the situation with no real consequence. Currently ongoing but nobody is saying shit. The Hyundai plant in Alabama has employed 50 underage workers. Some of them are as young as 12 years old. They have these kids working shifts around the clock. Crazy that this hasn't made a much bigger splash. Boy George. He was jailed for 15 months for imprisoning a Norwegian male escort after a nude photo shoot, in what the judge called a premeditated, callous and humiliating assault. He basically tortured him. And now he hosts TV shows in Australia. DuPont, still active company, when producing Teflon dumped loads of bad chemicals into the water and Teflon was poisoning people all over the world, giving them 6 known types of cancer. They covered it up for decades. Crazy how evil some companies are. That McDonald's Monopoly sweepstakes? None of the big prize-winning pieces ever made it to stores. The guy in charge of randomly putting them on cups and cartons after production kept them and gave them to friends, splitting the winnings. 4 years. MP pedophile dossier. A bunch of UK politicians were caught borrowing children for an orphanage for all the unspeakable things you can imagine. Another politician managed to weave himself into this circle consisting of around 20 members and took down names, dates, locations, and victims. He then handed off this book to the Home Office, British CIA, who then handed it to the police, who then lost it. No action was taken. The case has been reopened 5 times since and each conclusion has always been we lost the book. And we're not going to investigate it ourselves because I think this circle is still going on and the police are being paid off to never investigate it. There is foreplay before sex. What is a good afterplay? Is there any? After we clean ourselves up and say some lovely compliments to each other, we put our fav games on and play together, watch Netflix, stay close and hug for some time. It depends, but it's always great. Mario Kart. One of my long-term girlfriends, now ex, insisted on cleaning me up after. It sounds super weird but I actually started to enjoy it and it was nice to not have to do it myself. A good tip someone taught me is that if you really like a girl and you've stayed the night at her place, the next morning while she is showering you should make the bed. Probably not after play but I don't know what that is. Cuddling and sweet pillow talk before falling asleep. I find that sex makes us so vulnerable right after and some of the best and intimate conversations happen in those after moments. Edit. Thank you all for the appreciation. So glad to see there is still some tenderness left in humanity. I'm a sentimental creature and appreciate those moments so much when they happen. That thing where you lay naked and lightly run your fingers over their skin. Oh, and chocolate. Cuddling. Hey babe, hey race a towel to wipe off the cum. My so and I would usually cuddle for a while until we catch our breath then take a shower and clean up together. An ex used to always ask if I wanted a Capri Sun after sex then walk butt ass naked to go get us each one. So that if you're my wife you say, thanks, money is on the dresser and you go to the bathroom to pee. Before kids, cuddle. Round 2. After kids, quickly put clothes back on and go make lunch. Avoiding the wet spot. I found it's best if you pay them and then apologize for the crying. Usually going to the bathroom to clean up and then hang out. Though, I do need to shout out the most epic afterplay from my husband. Few weeks ago we got a little tipsy at lunch, Ubered home and went to town on each other. Did our usual clean up but hopped back in bed naked and chilled out. We put on Happy Gilmore and I fell asleep cuddled on his shoulder. What felt like a few minutes later, I get a gentle shake from my husband who whispered I have a surprise for you. He then gets up and comes back a few minutes later holding a box of pizza, wings, and breadsticks. I have never been more in love in my life. Edit. Wow, I have never had a comment blow up like this. Finally get to say that. I appreciate all the love to my husband. I agree he is amazing. I feel very lucky that our paths crossed. To address something I didn't think needed to be addressed but it keeps coming up, yes, he put on shorts to answer the door. He didn't greet the pizza guy balls out. I'm pretty sure that's illegal for multiple reasons. Serious men of Reddit who have been raped by women, what's your story? Between the ages of 7 to 11 my sister used to take me into her room and do things to me. First it was just touching my privates and making me touch hers but it escalated from there. Never told anyone about it and still haven't 6 years later. Thankfully I live on my own now and have cut off all ties with my family. Sucks man but it is what it is. I was drugged. I went over to a friend's house and we were supposed to go to a house party together. She asked if I wanted to pre-party, and I was like, yeah. So we took shot then she offered me some weed, I took a hit and as I exhaled, I suddenly woke up naked, under her on a bed, and she was going to town. She looked me in the face and said, "Are you okay?" "Oh you better be okay fuck." Then I blacked out again, and woke up in the yard. About 4 hours had passed and I had the worst headache in the world for another day or so. Went to the doctor and they confirmed I had Rohypnol in my system. Never spoke to her again. My girlfriend left me over it. I went into the worst depression of my life and attempted suicide over it. Fortunately a family member found me and took me to the hospital, where they saved my life and forced me into a mental evaluation where I ultimately entered regular therapy, got in some medicine, and I'm doing fine today. One of the 3 worst things I've endured this lifetime. Then 11 got dragged into a closet when I and my parents were visiting their friends. The rapist was their daughter, then 16. She proceeds to remove my clothes. I tried to sorta struggle away, but she pinned me and said, "You don't want your parents to know you're in here with me, you'll get in trouble," so I sorta stopped fighting it. When she got me naked, she starts to jerk me off and put a finger in my ass. I could not yet ejaculate. All that happened was just painful, and to this day I don't let anyone near my ass. She only stopped because her parents called for us to come eat dessert. I truly do not know how none of the adults saw that I had tears in my eyes, but I guess they had been drinking. After that I would always stay by the table with my parents when we went there. When I was 13 I got to stay at home and play WoW every time they went there, and have not met her again since. Told my sister a few years after and she did not believe me, since I've just put it in the past until this comment. Removed. Honestly not sure if I was raped or not, but I think I was. A former co-worker that had quit a couple weeks prior messaged me one night to see what I was doing and asked if wanted to come over and hang out. I wasn't doing anything, so I headed over to drink and hang out. I had no intention of doing anything sexual and only planned on drinking a little bit so that I could still drive home at the end of the night. I showed up, she got down a couple cups from her cupboard and we headed upstairs to her room to play a game and drink. She poured me a drink while I was setting the game up. I took one drink of it after I got everything all set up, and that is the last thing I remember before waking up naked in her bed. I asked if we had sex and she told me that we did, and that apparently I was pushy and saying she felt forced. Like I said, I had zero recollection of that night, so I naively apologized and told her I didn't recall. I went to go use the bathroom and realized I had a huge black eye, so I went and asked what the hell happened to me, and she told me she had no clue. I brushed it off and went about my life. A couple years ago I was thinking about how I blacked out that night and how I haven't ever blacked out after drinking since. It's especially suspicious because I literally do not remember anything immediately after taking a drink. Got catfished before it was called getting catfished. This was back around 01-02 and I was active on a very social message board. We had members all over the world and would often host big week-long parties at different people's houses across the US. It was normal for members to meet and hang out with people from other states. One of the people I'd known for about a year and was supposed to go hang out with her for a week, as I'd never been to her region and wanted to visit the cities in her area. The night before I'm supposed to fly out, she tells me she'd been lying and the photos and stuff she'd posted on the forum weren't her. I was already out a round-trip plane ticket and had taken the time off work. I could have backed out, probably would have just lost a good bit of money. In those days I used to spend all of my money on travel and concerts. So I'm like, what the fuck, I'll go anyway. Well, go around, visit the cities, still just do whatever, sightsee and enjoy it. So once I get there, I realize I didn't have a place to stay. She'd said that I could stay at her place, but I get there and her roommates aren't cool with it. Okay. Out a few $100 more for a hotel. Then her friend who we were supposed to be hanging out with, he was our ride, has to bail. This was like my second to last night before I was leaving. And up until now, except for the part where I'm now broke, everything was going fine. We were hanging out and listening to music, sightseeing, went to a few clubs, etc. It's been 100% platonic and chill. She knew I wasn't attracted to her at all, but she wasn't shy about her attraction to me. I just took it as flattery and tried to be gracious and nice. On the second to last night, she got aggressive. She was at my hotel, she'd been sleeping there as well since we were hanging out. I'd even gotten a room with 2 beds so there wouldn't be mixed signals or accidental sleep cuddling or anything weird. But yet, she got aggressive. I was legit broke at this point, not even enough cash left for a cab or anything. She eventually gives me the ultimatum that I sleep with her or she will leave, just abandon me there with no cash, no ride, nothing. I held out for a little while but eventually figured it was best to just get it over with. Just appease her so she would stop. So I gave in. During the act, she was crying and asked me to punch her in the face and once told me, "You look like my rapist in this lighting." The next day, I got them to take me to the airport early, just lied to them about my departure time and sat at the airport for like 8 hours so I wouldn't have to be in her presence or ever see her again. For a couple weeks she was calling me and telling me that she was pregnant and I had to come back to her. She would just scream and cry into the phone. I eventually got a call from her guy friend who I'd hung out with, and he said that she was full of shit and trying to threaten and manipulate me into continuing to talk to her. I was repeatedly sexualized, molested, and raped by a 13-year-old babysitter from the ages of 9 to 11. She forced me to do unspeakable things to her, and if I didn't, she'd hurt my genitals. I was 12 and my family and friends went on a cruise. Met some other kids at the teen club that had alcohol, so why not? Then hot tub, then back to a room to hang. Older girl, maybe 16 to 17, was flirting, but I wasn't really at that point in puberty where I was interested, also a virgin. I got tired of all the people and ended up falling asleep. Woke up to a dark room and her going down on me. I was pretty out of it and wasn't sure what was going on, pushed her off and went back to sleep. She didn't stop. Not the best way to lose your virginity. Had a woman crush a bunch of Xanax up and put it in my beer. I was clueless that she did it. I blacked out after the beer and came to with her on top of me and her fiancé freaking out. She was trying to make him mad because they were fighting. He was freaking out because he walked in on it happening, and on top of that I wasn't responding. When he realized how messed up I was, he helped me get home. I couldn't speak coherently or even walk, so he practically carried me to his car. He called me the next day to check on me and tell me that she told him what she did to me. Him and I are still friends 15 years later and neither of us have spoken to her since. I tried to press charges and he went and gave a witness statement. The cops laughed at us and never even tried to investigate it. Well, this is a tough one because I have two. First, I was sexually abused as a kid. At 13 years old I was forced by my mom's boyfriend to have sex with my best friend who was also 13. That was rough enough and I lost my best friend, but after that he more or less pimped me out to an older female friend of his. He would force me to have sex with her and film it. I disassociated well enough that the only thing I remember about her was the smell of stale cigarette smoke. I eventually beat him with an aluminum baseball bat until I was kicked out and rendered homeless at 13. Then the second I was at a rave. I was 17 and had been homeless for about 4 years, so the rave scene was the closest thing I had to family. Those of us who were regulars trusted and knew each other. This rave was 3 days long, so by the end of day 2 I'm seeing shit without the psilocybin. I asked my friend if I can crash in the back of his van. Well, I didn't lock the door because I was an idiot. I wake up actively being ridden by a girl and I'm just terribly confused. I don't know who she is, so I shove her off and she starts crying. She tells me she needs to get pregnant because her boyfriend is leaving for the military and she said I kinda look like him. From there she asks me if I'll just do it anyway as a favor. I kick her out and never see her again. I hope that poor dude isn't trapped by that psycho. I was 13 when I raped by my at the time best friend's 19-year older sister. She then gaslit me into thinking that I liked it even though I hadn't enjoyed it and that we were now in a relationship, which basically amounted to me giving her my allowance and her continuing to rape me. This continued on for over 2 months before she admitted the whole thing to her parents and brother to twist the knife into them when they found out about her coke habit. Can you guess who they blamed? If you answered the adult woman in the equation, then you're sadly mistaken. Even my own parents just wanted to sweep the whole ordeal under the rug. The only thing that keeps that event from being the worst thing that happened that year is that a few months after that I was hit by a car and put in a coma for a week. After that suddenly people stopped talking about the whole cokehead girlfriend thing. Took over a decade for me to really come to grips with what she had done to me, and I really wish that the next sexual encounter that I had at age 16 had been my first. As that one was at least between two consenting people the same age. Was waiting until marriage to have sex, made it to 20 years old before drugged and raped by 2 girls from the base I was stationed at. They did it for bragging rights because it was well known I was a virgin. Sent me into a dark downward spiral of depression and drinking and drug abuse. Been clean and sober for almost 2 years now. Edit. Wow. Thank you everyone for the kind words. To the people DMing me saying how lucky/cool I was that happened to me, hope you stub your baby toe today. I was 10, she was 13 and looking after me whilst my mother was at work. I was already in a shitty place because my mother was physically, emotionally and verbally abusive towards me. I was forced into intercourse that day, I froze and she took advantage. I developed CPTSD, depression and anxiety from that event, which, coupled with my so-called mother, led to a suicide attempt at 14. I didn't talk to anyone about it until I was 28. I'm in a far better place now. I don't know if I would call it rape. I struggle even to let myself think of it as abuse. My mom would, from the earliest I can remember, come in on me in the bathroom. On the toilet? She's in there talking to me. In the shower? Needs to get a look at me. I had a testicular injury at like 4 that I don't remember. But it meant that I got pain in my groin all the time. If I ever mentioned it, she would tell me to drop my pants and then she'd check for torsion by feeling my testicles. I was told it was okay because she was a nurse. She'd also hit me and dig her fingernails into my arms or shoulders when I got too big for her to manhandle. Sometimes she would make me cuddle her in my parents' bed when my dad was out of town on business. She'd be barely clothed. The only thing that stopped it all was her dying when I was a teenager. Now I get to feel guilty about wanting her dead or feeling relief. It's all really fucked me up to the point where I had no relationships until college and then I got involved with a heroin addict who cheated on me constantly and tried to convince me to kill myself. When I didn't, she did a solo exit. Child abuse is the gift that keeps on taking. I tried sharing this story before and I got 3 different reactions and all of them were disgusting to the point of suicidal thoughts. So I'll probably delete this. I will say now that I'm okay, but people don't make it easy to share. I had a roommate who had several kids, aged 2 to 14. He was in his 40s and a bit of a deadbeat dad and his 6 kids came from like 4 mothers. But he'd get some of them every other weekend. They'd come over and I'd let them play video games with us in my room, he would be in there too, all of us taking turns playing. I had a California king-size bed and people who weren't playing would sit or lay on it while waiting/watching the others play. One night I was laying on my bed, falling asleep as he played video games with his 12-year-old son. His 6-year-old was asleep on the floor, and his 14-year-old daughter was at the opposite corner of the bed, facing the TV, far away from me, and I fell asleep. I woke up because it felt like someone laying on me or moving around a lot close to me and I opened my eyes to the 14-year-old sucking my dick. Her pants were off completely and mine were pulled down. I pulled away and asked her why she was doing that and she said she saw that it was hard and thought I wanted it. I told her she can't just do that without asking and that she was way too young to be even sleeping in my bed and that this is wrong. She said, "Oh, it's okay, I wanted to, I won't tell anyone and get you in trouble." I told her I didn't want to and she got sort of crabby with me and said okay and just rolled over to go back to sleep. I laid there for a while, contemplating what to do as she went to sleep. I got up and went to the living room and laid alone on the couch. Her dad was asleep in his room. She got up and followed me into the living room and asked if I was uncomfortable because the other kids were in the room with us as she tried to get on the couch with me. I told her what she did was wrong, but she didn't seem to grasp why it was wrong. She just kept reiterating that she wasn't gonna tell anyone and that it was okay and still trying to make a move. That's when she told me that we were having sex before I woke up and she had just started sucking it because I wasn't wearing a condom. I told her that her dad was going to be pissed and would want to know where she even learned that behavior and she asked why I would tell him. I said that she needed to understand why what she did was wrong. Her eyes went from naive schoolgirl with a crush to absolute sociopath and she said, "I won't tell anyone, but you can't either. If you do, I'll just say you made me do it." I didn't know how to react so I just asked her to go back to bed and she did, and I slept on the couch. The next morning her dad came out and saw me on the couch and apologized for the kids falling asleep and taking up the bed. I thought about telling him right then, but I knew his personality enough to know he'd try to fight me as if I wanted it, especially if she claimed I made her. I was gonna tell her grandma when she came to take them all back to their moms, but I didn't know if she would blame me either. I wasn't sure what to do. A few days passed and then I felt even more guilty because now it was a secret I had kept and that made me look more suspicious. I moved out and got my own place a couple of months later. A little over a year after that, I got a call from my old roommate. He was freaking out and angry and told me he just got a call from his daughter and she was coming to live with him because she was pregnant, and the father was her stepfather. It turned out he had been sexually abusing her for years and nobody found out until she was pregnant. I still feel terrible to this day that I didn't say something the night she did what she did. Maybe if I did, the conversation would have led to everyone discovering what she was going through at home and ended it sooner and before she got pregnant at 15.